food. Then we left. They just slept and were unaware of what had happened.
Võtsime toidukraami ka kaasa ja siis tulime ära, nii et rahulikult magas, nii et ei teadnud mitte midagi.
Rõõmu ja vaimustusega.
It was with gladness and enthusiasm that Estonian cities and villages celebrated the 5th anniversary of Soviet Estonia. Comrade Weimer, chairman of the Council of the People's Commissars of the Estonian SSR, opens the big joyful town meeting. The newsreel only shows one side of this life with two faces, the luck of getting to live under Stalin's son. The interrogator took his gun, slammed it on the table, and said, "I'll kill him like a whelp if he keeps mocking us with his false names." Father came home. I was there alone. He said to me, "I'm not going back." He joined the liberation movement. It was difficult to try to hold out in the woods and in the underground movement, and it was easy to be caught. The files of interrogations contain statements that were largely induced by what is politely called physical intervention. It is difficult to tell which ones contain true accounts and which were signed in utter despair. He testified in Patarei prison and told me that he denounced me. He said he just couldn't bear it anymore. They beat him with clubs. We were in adjoining cells. I asked who he was, and he told me his name and that he denounced us. He said he had a wife and they'd beat him with clubs. I said, "I and my friends have wives too." The widespread principle among the resistance fighters was not to be taken alive because they didn't know how they would succeed in enduring interrogation. If they were caught alive, the rule number 1 was to keep one's silence for 3 days. After that, you were allowed to talk. If a man went missing and he didn't show up in 3 days, you had to leave your bunker and relocate to a new place. In addition to the guerrilla, schoolboys also resisted the Soviet regime. Their idea was to do something to show that not everyone accepted the new Soviet system. 82 trials were held during the period from 1945 until 1953. Over 700 school children were given guilty verdicts. Student resistance groups destroyed communist monuments in Tallinn, Tartu, and Rakvere. Leaflets were also distributed. I worked in a printing plant. There I composed a text, brought it home with some printer's ink and a rubber roll, and with my friend we made these leaflets.
Sain natuke kaasa võtta trükivärvi, kummirulli ja kodus sõbraga me tegime neid lendlehti.
Stalini organisatsioon.
One organization based in Tallinn killed the guard while gathering supplies and weapons. A group of boys in Tartu wanted to go to Finland, but they were discovered. They shot one militiaman fatally and wounded the other. The Soviet system prosecuted all of these things as terrorism.
Ja kinnipidamisel laskis üks ühe miilitsa maha haavas teist. Nii et kõik niisugused asjad, mis läksid tõesti terrorismi alla ja mis oli.
Määrati 6 surmaotsust.
In this case, 6 death penalties were pronounced and 3 were carried out. The repressive structure was complex in nature. There were the courts and various tribunals, and also extrajudicial mechanisms such as troikas and special councils. Ordinarily, interrogation was carried out only at night, but during the day you weren't supposed to sleep. This went on night after night. The interrogators would differ. You sit on a bench or sometimes you'd stand. Eventually, you're ready to sign anything, just to make it stop. They beat everyone just out of principle, so to speak. They wanted to find out who had served in the Finnish army and resided in Tartu, but there were quite a few of us. They were also interested in student underground organizations.
Kas on üliõpilaste hulgas mingi põrandaalune organisatsioon? See huvitas neid eriti.
Acquiring knowledge of progressive Soviet science, a new generation of scientific workers is born. Its supreme goal is to serve the working people with all of their capability and abilities. Studies at Tartu University began in November 1944. The party demanded that Marxist-Leninist theory pervade studies and scientific research. Students and lecturers were subjected to pressure. During 5 years, the university party organization grew from 3 members to 109.
likvideeriti teadusseltse.
Scientific societies were shut down, among them the Learned Estonian Society in 1950. The publications of the university ceased to appear. The main task now was to re-evaluate the country's cultural heritage. Censorship was employed. 26 million forbidden books were gathered and destroyed, often by burning. 15% of the valuable holdings of libraries survived in special holding areas, but these too were often mutilated, with forbidden pages being cut out or brushed with ink. During the decade of 1940 to 1950, over 6,000 new books and booklets were published, totaling more than 40 million copies. This amounts to nearly 5 books per person a year. Every 5th book had a social-political emphasis, such as books by Lenin and Stalin. When I returned from prison after a year, things had changed. People were much more afraid. But the mental attitude of lecturers had remained the same. This lasted until 1949, perhaps 1950. Then Soviet pressure grew, and the lecturers too began to fear. Many of them were arrested.
Siis alles tuli see võimas Nõukogude press peale ja õppejõud hakkasid ka juba kartma. Ka nende hulgas oli palju arreteerimisi.
Hundreds of peasants and workers joined hands to make fallow lands bear fruit. Together, Estonians repair the deep wounds of war, fulfill and overfulfill the targets of the new 5-year plan. They achieve cultural and economic prosperity for the homeland. After they have labored at the People's Meeting, Secretary of the Central Committee of the Estonian Communist Bolshevist Party, Comrade Karotam, lent his approval to the proficiency and single-mindedness of the inhabitants of Saaremaa for having increased the fertility of their farmlands. Their patriotic initiative will be lauded as an example to others in all of Soviet Estonia. They made this list of kulaks and began to repress them. In the beginning, they were forced to harvest huge quantities of lumber. But here in Harjumaa, we didn't have any forests close by. So they had to go somewhere, all the way up to Alutaguse. They took their meals and went. The women weren't allowed to accompany them. They had no choice but to hire assistants, who became burdensome to them because of the labor expenses that this brought with it. What's more, they had to hand over huge specified amounts of agricultural products to the state. These were many times bigger than the norms of smaller peasants. And finally, they were hit with large monetary payments. These were in the thousands of rubles, but rubles were hard to get. It was a foregone conclusion. They were pronounced to be kulaks who hadn't fulfilled their obligations to the state. They were afraid of people and that they might be able to cope and do well. In collective farms, they hauled up cows to the ceiling with ropes. It was all a big farce. At the same time, they sang and claimed that we had the best life and the fairest system in the world. But then they sucker-punched you, and the deportations began. What the Soviet system did to the Estonian people is documented on shelves with a total length of 1.5 kilometers at the Estonian